see if the fashionably late Democrats join us.
Well, I've got a recording, Bill, but I don't have, it's not letting me into YouTube.
Well, I see the recording, and the worst that would happen is let's see. You saw where it said start YouTube.
You know what it gives me is, I don't get that actually. I get a different prompt.
Oh,
Like it is live on YouTube. Then choose an account to continue to Zoom.
and main CCDC should be one of the accounts that you would continue on.
Right, I know, right, I don't, it doesn't come up, it doesn't pop up. Well, so it says I can use another account, so I go into, I put it in, but it's not recognizing it. So for some reason, it's taken me out of that.
Oh, okay. If you put in a different account, it might send it there, but nobody's going to know to look there to find it.
Right,
You might be able to find
exactly.
it later.
Right, all right, we'll record it and then we'll sync it on YouTube. We'll hopefully have this
Yeah.
worked out, okay.
It may be that if Seth joined this meeting under his own name rather than under CCDC.
No, I
I
haven't
came in
started
at
under
CCDC.
CCDC. I tested it this morning, and YouTube and the YouTube path was working fine, but it's but it's a little tricky getting started, and that's just the way YouTube works.
Yeah.
No, I know the problem. Actually, I signed in as an ACDC, not CCDC. Maybe that'll be.
Ah, nice. Dirty deeds done dirt cheap.
Hmm.
Bill, how is the waiting room looking? Are we caught up?
Yeah.
All right. Then let's call this meeting to order. Welcome, Cumberland County Democrats, to our April general membership meeting. We do have quorum, which is at least 15 people from 3 different towns. And I won't go through a full roll call, but we are pretty well representing Cumberland County in this group, and we're well over 15. So we are authorized to do business. First thing on the agenda is approving the agenda, which I circulated to all of you. We're going to have to make one change in the agenda right off the bat. And that is, at this particular moment, we do not have a secretary. Our elected secretary, Natalie Kelleher, resigned for personal reasons. We are going to be electing a secretary very shortly, but at this moment, we do not have one. I have asked Joe Zamboni if he would be willing to serve as our temporary secretary until the election. That does not mean that Joe will necessarily become the permanent secretary. He can if he gets elected. Is there any objection from membership to Joe serving as our secretary until we elect an official one? And you can indicate by raising your hands, waving your hands, somehow catching my attention. I see a thumbs up. All right. No objection. All right. Then with no objection, Joe will be serving as our.
You're on there, but I can't.
I'm sorry. Okay. That wasn't an objection. I think that was just. Always happy to have young people. So Joe will be our temporary secretary until we have an election. And with that business out of the way, is there any other corrections to or additions to the agenda that I circulated in a couple of emails? Any corrections or additions? I'm not seeing any hands. I'm not hearing any. So we will proceed with our agenda. And the first order of business is to approve the minutes from our January meeting. Those also, a link to those minutes were circulated to you in a couple of emails. Does anybody have any corrections or additions to the minutes from our last general membership meeting?
I couldn't change it to put my name on there, so I don't know.
I'm sorry. Who is speaking and what is it that you think needs to be changed?
Honey, are you muted?
Was somebody suggesting that a name was left out of the minutes and needs to be added in? No, I will take that as a private conversation. So is there any objection to accepting the minutes as circulated?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any objection? Then we will accept the minutes from our last general membership meeting as prepared and circulated. Treasurer's report. Bill, tell us how well we're doing.
Well, we're doing just fine. We've got $11,104.86 in the bank. I have another $40.32 worth of checks that haven't been deposited yet. We do have a couple of things coming up in that we have said, yes, we want a position at the Cumberland Fair, but they haven't asked for money yet. And we normally have our insurance bill come due early in the summer. I haven't received it yet, but it wouldn't surprise me if it shows up in the next couple of weeks. And each of those is going to be about $350. Yes, we will actually spend money. Those who contribute regularly, yes, it does. It's not like it goes into my back pocket. We actually do have expenses. At some point, we've talked a little about how old and decrepit our website is, but what we need to do is actually get some people who want to serve on a finance committee and put together a budget for trying to figure out what we want to do to our website. So we anticipate there will be expenses, but we want to have a budget first. And we don't have it. We don't actually have anybody on the finance committee except me right at the moment. But if anybody would like to volunteer, you can let Seth or I know, and we'll figure out, normally at this point in an off-year election is the time we look at putting together a budget, which is tricky in a year that has all this stuff, all the oddities of meetings and viruses in it, but it's still something that we ought to do. So my simple plead for volunteers, and that's it. Any questions?
All right, Bill mentioned that we would like to have a finance committee. The next general membership meeting is going to largely be devoted to ways in which people can get involved and areas where we would like people to get involved. And that includes a finance committee. There will be other committees and opportunities that we'll discuss with you in more detail. If anyone can think of some urgent needs for now, we can look at those at the end of today's meeting during announcements and new business. But I do want to give you a heads up that that's going to be a central topic for our June membership meeting, finance and a couple of other committees. And a little later in today's meeting, we'll hear from somebody speaking about one committee, which we have gotten started, and that's our DEI committee. And that will be coming up a little bit later in this meeting. So next up, election of a Cumberland County Democratic Committee secretary. This position is important. One of the requirements for any political organization is that there be a recording secretary to take minutes. It's also somebody who can assist in sending out notices to membership. Our bylaws say that the secretary is responsible for notifying the main Democratic Party about changes in county committee structure. It's an important position. The secretary is also on the Cumberland County Democratic Committee Executive Committee. Membership meets once every other month, or has been, and hopefully will continue to. I've been asking the Executive Committee to meet every other week, so that if that's not required, we won't show up at your house and drag you off if you're not there. But it is something that's very much desired, because the Executive Committee talks about issues facing Cumberland County and how we can help make progress with them. And having more heads there for those meetings, I have found has been really, really helpful. One person has expressed an interest in serving as secretary. That's Joe Zamboni. He did let me know that in advance. He provided a short candidate statement, and I provided you a link to that. Joe is not being handed that position at this time because we can take nominations at this meeting, and that is a democratic way to do things. So if there is if there's more than one candidate, we will have an election, which is also a democratic way of doing things. Is there anyone else who would like to nominate yourself or have somebody else nominate you to serve as Cumberland County Democratic Committee Secretary? And you can raise hands, wave your hands. If you can give your name politely, we can take it that way too. Going once. Going twice. So at this time, it looks like Joe Zamboni is the only person who has expressed an interest in serving as secretary. Okay, that's somebody entering the meeting. That's not somebody objecting. Joe, would you like to take a minute or two to tell Cumberland County why you would be a good choice for secretary?
Sure. Thanks, Seth. Yeah, I'm interested in being secretary. I want to support Seth as he picks up this role. I enjoy the role of secretary because I think I can be really helpful in terms of taking and synthesizing notes, following up with people, including the state committee, and just being a general support figure. So I've been a secretary before for a Democratic committee, and I think I'll do a good job if you all will have me.
Does anybody have any questions for Joe? And let me say that as secretary, I'm flattered that he wants to support me. He's really supporting all of the Cumberland County Democrats. So he's by no means my personal assistant. He is our assistant.
He's everyone's personal assistant.
Yes. Is there any objection to Joe Zamboni serving as secretary for the Cumberland County Democratic Committee. Would somebody like to make a motion that one vote be cast in favor of Joe Zamboni?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second.
And any objection to that motion? Joe Zamboni, I hereby declare you the secretary of the Cumberland County Democratic Committee, and you are now taking minutes in an official and long-lasting capacity. And now we have a couple of other elections, and this is not for the county position, it is for county representation on state committees. And these are very important state committees in terms of business moving forward. One of these is the Platform Committee. The Maine Democratic Party has a platform. It presents what the Maine Democratic Party stands for. The Platform Committee is the organization that looks at and makes recommendations about the platform. The actual decisions are made by the state convention, which meets every 2 years. The convention has exclusive authority to amend the platform, but the Platform Committee's recommendations are very important. And so in this past summer of 2020, the Platform Committee recommended quite a significant change in the entire structure of our platform. And that was work that the Platform Committee as a whole had a hand in. Right now, it's a little early to know whether any massive changes on the same scale are being thought about. But if you have any in mind, getting onto the Platform Committee is probably the best way to get those kinds of changes in front of the convention. The Platform Committee consists of representations from each county. It consists of a few members who are elected by the state committee, and there are some other members to the Platform Committee. Cumberland County, and representation from each county is based on the number of Democrats in the county. Cumberland County being a very Democrat-rich county, we have 13 positions on the Platform Committee. And it's really important that we get 13 people onto the committee. I think Cumberland County has a really dedicated, informed body of members, and I'd like to see our knowledge and our dedication having an active role in the discussions about the platform. Platform Committee at this point is likely to be meeting by Zoom. We don't know what's going to be happening with COVID. Before COVID hit, meetings were in person, but I think at least for the foreseeable future, meetings are likely to be the same way that this one is, by Zoom or some other video conference, which makes it a lot more convenient for people. Means you don't have to get up to Augusta on short notice and then get back home and try to get dinner on the table. How the meetings will take place for the convention itself remains to be seen, but that is still a year and some months off. The first meeting of Platform Committee is likely to be September 15th or before. So there's still a little bit of time before even remote duties would be starting. I think then it will meet once a month, once every other month. It will depend on really the preference of that meeting. I think I saw Steve Hendrickson with us. He has been a past chair of the platform committee. If anyone has any questions about how the platform committee operates, Steve would probably be a better resource for that than I am, if he cares to be. But that's a kind of an overview of a platform committee. And right now, I'd like to see at least 13 people wildly raising their hands and expressing an interest. Craig Cardamone had expressed an interest in advance. I won't hold you to that, Craig, but I hope that you still are. But at this point, and we will be getting to credentials right now, and you can serve on both platform and credentials. But right now we're talking about platform, and I am asking if there is any interest in serving as a member of the platform committee from Cumberland County. I see Marcella's hand. Marcella Marino. If these are going by too fast for you, Joe, can you slow me down? But so far what I'm seeing is Craig Cardamone, Marcella Marino, Eli Edgecombe, Jay Philbrick.
People, Seth, there are people who are in comments saying they're interested and a couple have questions.
Okay. Okay, so let me see if I can get to question. Are there any qualifications to be eligible to serve on platform committee? That is an excellent question. Yes, there are two. That you be a registered Democrat and that you live in Cumberland County. You do not have to be a voting member of this county committee. You do not have to be on the state committee. You just have to be a registered Democrat living in Cumberland County and be ready to attend the meetings. Let me also say the meetings, I think, can be of different lengths. I don't think that they generally are going to be full day affairs. Generally, it's not designed to be something that people are going to regret. It's going to be based on people's ability. So that was one question. How many people are needed? 13. Cumberland, this is not true of all counties. Cumberland County has 13 representatives to platform. I see that Tom Bull is expressing an interest. So let me see if I can get the names again. So I saw Abigail Gear, Craig Cardamone, Marcella Marino, Eli Edgecombe, Jay Philbrook, Tom Bull, well, we're about halfway. Do we need gender balance? If we can get there. There is a strong suggestion within the main Democratic Party charter that representation of the platform committee be gender balanced. I don't read that as binding. We would certainly like to get there if we can. But if we only have 13 volunteers and the gender breakdown is 8 to 5 or 9 to 4, I think that that would probably be acceptable to the Democratic Party. What is the agony and ecstasy of serving on the platform committee from those who have done it before?
Can I speak to that, Seth?
Certainly.
It's Eli from Scarborough, and we last year came up with a couple of really helpful technology pieces that made it a much simpler process. We had meetings that only lasted a couple of hours. We weren't broken into committees, and we made decisions as a group, and we were able to make them relatively quickly as long as people had already read through the documents at home using Google Docs. And so it was a far less painful process than I have heard of it being in the past, and just didn't want anyone to think of the stories that they'd heard of trying to combine pieces of the platform being so painful. So yeah, that's it.
And one of the agonies would be feeling passionately about a particular approach and finding that you don't have enough support to carry it. But that's politics. But we're getting there. When are the meetings typically held? I think that's what I've been told is that the first meeting is going to be no later than September 5th. I would expect that Maine Democratic Party Chair Drew Gattin would call for the first meeting. At that first meeting, a chair of the platform committee would be elected, and then the chair, after talking with the members, would set up a schedule of meetings for the future. Eli, how often did the meetings happen when you served?
We began with the end in mind and looked at the deadlines and figured out how often we needed to meet so that we wouldn't be meeting a lot at the end. And I cannot honestly remember if it was always consistent, but it was, maybe every couple of months.
Okay.
When we did meet monthly, and there was an effort for people to do it at times, to do it in the same location before the pandemic, around the committee meeting, realizing that many people on the platform committee also on the state committee, so trying to make it more efficient, allow people to attend one and then go to the state committee meeting after.
I think generally there's a desire to make meetings easy for people to attend, or at least as easy as possible. So I would expect that the platform committee chair would try to find out from membership times and days that are most convenient. That's not to say that everything is going to work for everyone. I would expect that if somebody had to miss a meeting or two, that was understood because people have lives. It's just that there is an expectation that people will make as many meetings as they possibly can. And the approach is to make those meetings doable for people. That's because I work full time and rather long hours. As I said, not every meeting is going to work for everyone, depending on when you're working. For instance, if you work evenings during the work week, that may be a time when the meetings are going to be held. A Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. I don't know. Or if you are always busy on weekends, that may be an issue. If you are working such hours that any kind of monthly meeting is going to be difficult for you, probably don't ask to serve. But if you've got room on your schedule, go into this thinking that it can be made to work for you. If it doesn't, we'll deal with that later. I don't know if that gives you a full answer, Paula, but that's probably the best answer that I can give at this point.
That helps a lot. Thank you. And I can put my name in.
Okay, and that's Paula talking?
Mm-hmm. It is.
And Seth, I saw
Yes.
Scott DeBlock from
Yep.
Scarborough has chimed in and he can do it.
Yes, thank you. So these are the names I have so far. Craig Cardamone, Abigail Gear, Eli Edgecombe, Marcella Marino, Tom Bull, Jay Philbrick, Matthew Irving, Scott DeBlock, Richard Farnsworth, Paula Coyne. Did I miss anyone who has volunteered so far? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, we are so close, people. 3 more. Am I seeing a new hand? Lanny Graham, is that a hand? All right. 2 more. And I don't mean to say we can only get 13. If 14 people want to serve, we will very happily have an election. So I am not at all discouraging all the enthusiasm from expressing itself here. Damon is saying I did platform for years. I plan to sit out this cycle. No, I get it. All right. Thank you for doing it in the past, Damon. All right, I probably could. Okay, that's enough enthusiasm for me, Jillian. You're in. And I'm checking to see how this is gender balancing. I don't think it's an absolute requirement, but if we can get close, I think Augusta would appreciate it. And we are at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 who are non-male and 6 who are non-female. Boy, we're good. And so that last person can be anything, and we'll still be setting an example for the rest of the state. Do we need an alternate? No, I don't believe that we elect an alternate to the committee. If I'm wrong about that, we can look at that at our next meeting. There we go, Catherine Stewart. Is there anyone else? I don't want to cut this off. If there's somebody else who has been thinking about it and deciding yes. Anyone else? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Final call. Okay, so these are the names of people who volunteered. Craig Cardamone, Abigail Gear, Eli Edgecombe, Marcella Marino, Tom Bull, Jay Philbrick, Matthew Irving, Scott DeBlock, Richard Farnsworth, Paula Coyne, Lanny Graham, Jillian Trapani Huff, and Catherine Stewart. Is there anybody who I put on this list who doesn't want to be there? All right, we have 13 names for 13 positions. Is there any objection from membership to approving this as the Cumberland County Democratic Committee representation to the Maine Democratic Party platform committee? Any objection?
Nope.
Is somebody willing to make a motion that we approve this as a slate? Rachel, I
So
see your
moved.
hand.
Yep, so moved.
Second.
All right.
Second.
Any opposition to that motion? Oh, this is great. This is great. All right, we just have one more election. And does anybody have any questions right now about platform committee? We'll be talking about this more moving forward. Right now, we just wanted to identify our representation. I'll pass this on to the Maine Democratic Party, and we'll share with you what other information we need to have. All right, the next call for service is to the Credentials Committee. The primary function of the Credentials Committee is to look at whether people are properly delegates to the convention and to the caucuses, the county caucuses that come before the convention. So typically in terms of timing, the caucus is going to be in March of 2022. The convention is going to be in June. And the credentials committee makes sure that people who are supposed to be eligible to participate in those events are given the proper credentials, and also to make sure that people who are not eligible are not given credentials. There are various measures before the legislature about opening up primaries to make them open so that you don't have to be a Democrat to vote in a Democratic primary. The main Democratic Party at this point is not doing any such thing for our caucuses and our convention. So whatever happens in terms of voting, the caucuses and the convention are still going to be Democratic Party events. And the Credentials Committee is going to be charged with making sure that only those who are supposed to be are participating, and all those who are supposed to be will be participating. We get one rep member on the Credentials Committee. The first meeting of credentials, I'm told, is going to be no later than December 5th of this year. There may be meetings by Zoom before caucuses and the convention. I would think that Credentials Committee meetings before the caucuses are going to be remote, because the caucuses are going to be in separate towns, in separate counties, all over the state. So it doesn't make sense to have people meeting in one centralized location. Where Credentials Committee will be meeting for the convention is not yet known. That one probably will have to be at the convention if COVID conditions allow it. And in 2022, that will be in Bangor. So our representative to the Credentials Committee should be prepared to be able to make it to Bangor and stay through the duration of the convention, because credentials questions can continue to arise through the convention. That's what I know about credentials. Does anybody have any questions before I take nominations to serve? Richard, I see your hand. Do you have a question, or are you nominating yourself to serve on the Credentials Committee? Richard Farnsworth? You're muted if you're trying to talk to me.
I need to get rid of the hand.
Okay,
One committee's enough.
I understand. Does anybody have a question about the Credentials Committee? Before this meeting, Craig DeRay had expressed an interest in serving. Is there anyone else who would like to serve on the Credentials Committee? Anyone? Craig, are you with us today? Craig DeRay. He did express to me an interest. I just heard a sound. Is that a chat message? So having no other takers, is there any objection to Craig DeRay being elected? If it turns out that he in fact does not want to serve, we can revisit this in between. Rachel?
Yeah, I don't have an objection. Craig's done a lot of good work for Cumberland County. But we do have another meeting coming up. I'm just a little uncomfortable not knowing if he's still interested, or if there are people around who would do it, but they're not on this meeting. I guess it's just a little, I just have a question on that. And I reiterate that Craig has done a lot of good work for us. I know him, so we do have additional opportunity to elect someone.
So Rachel makes a very good point. What I've been told is that the deadline for submitting our members to committees is June 1st for credentials. Our next, I'm sorry?
Let me tell you that people, counties, usually, there are several that don't submit their candidate until September or so. That June 1st is a wish on the part of the folks up in Augusta. The counties get their delegates in when they get them in.
My wish is that Cumberland County plays by the rules to the greatest extent that we can. What I would propose is that if there's a bill, yes.
Now I have done it for like the last 3 or 4 cycles, but this was supposed to be my 50th college reunion. It got postponed due to the pandemic. We don't have a new date yet. And if it gets postponed into next June, I would have a serious conflict. The biggest downside to credentials is that they don't meet regularly. They meet in 2 bursts, just before the convention and just before and just after the caucuses. And a certain amount of what they do is determine what data they want to collect during the caucuses and make sure everybody does it consistently. And the number one risk is if there is any question about credentials, you have to show up before the convention and start working your way through it so the convention isn't delayed. It hasn't happened any of the times I've been on there that you've had to show up a day or 2 early, but it's a legitimate risk if somebody is thinking about it. It does, you know, you don't have a lot of meetings, but there's a lot of work to do. They're also interesting people. So, you know, there's one from each county and you get to learn a whole lot about that part of the state that isn't Cumberland.
Thank you, Bill. So what I would propose, and this is subject to your approval, is that we go forward with an election on Craig DeRay. If you vote him down, then we still have an opening. If you vote in favor of him, I would require him to confirm well before the June 1st deadline that he is in fact willing to serve. If I cannot get that confirmation, then I will take advantage of Rachel's excellent insight into how Augusta works, and we will either call a special meeting, Cumberland County, for the purpose of electing a representative to Cumberland County, to the Credentials Committee, or more likely, we will take care of it at our June meeting. So we would be electing or approving somebody subject to Craig DeRay giving a firm confirmation. And if I don't get that, then I will consider that the position is still open. Is there any discussion on what I'm proposing?
I think there's a lot of value in letting people know if they don't show up for the meeting, they may be nominated.
Yes. Is that saying that this is an acceptable process to you, Eli, and that Craig's
Yes, it
getting
is.
what he deserves? Okay. Hearing no objection, but somebody willing to make a motion that we approve Craig DeRay as our representative to the Credentials Committee, subject to his confirming this well in advance of our next meeting.
I so move.
Is there
Second,
all right. Is there any opposition to that motion? Helen, I see your screen highlighted. Are you about to say something? Helen?
No, I'm just waiting to vote.
Okay. Well, is there, if there is no opposition to that motion, then we don't need to formally vote on it. The motion carries without opposition. I have a thumbs up from Richard. Okay. We are now at 3:46. We're actually running a little bit ahead of time. And we're coming up to what I thought was kind of the most exciting part of this month's meeting, which is hearing from people, registered Democrats who are running for positions that are going to be elected this summer. Most of those positions are nonpartisan, but my feeling is if you're a registered Democrat looking to hold office, that we want to know about it and we want to support you as we're able and give you an opportunity to say what kind of support you are looking for. I heard from 4 candidates ahead of this meeting, and I'll give each of you who is here a chance to let us all know who you are, what you're running for, why you're running for it, what you stand for, and what kind of help you would like from us. After that, if there is anyone else who is a registered Democrat running for a position that's going to be elected, voted on this summer, please speak up, and time permitting, I'll be happy to give you the floor for the same kind of presentation. So I've seen that Abigail Gear is with us. Abigail, are you still with us?
I am. Yes.
All right. So tell us who you are, what you're running for, why you're running, what kind of help you need, and where you're running also.
Thanks so much. My name is Abigail Gear. I'm running for the Town Select Board in Raymond. The election is on June 8th. And I'm running because I grew up in Cumberland County, and I loved the values that growing up in Cumberland County instilled in me of wanting to help my neighbor and looking for opportunities and ways to help people out. And now that I am a grown up, moving back into a house that I bought from my parents, I'm really looking for ways to connect to Raymond, which is not the town that I grew up in. I grew up in Cumberland. So I'm looking for ways to connect with people, and I'm also looking for ways to make it more feasible for my age mates to also move home to Maine. I know so many of us spread across the country who have been looking for a way to come home, and it hasn't been possible yet. And I'm excited to be back, and I just want to do my part for my neighbors and also see if I can get some more neighbors to move back to Maine. And in terms of help, I'll take any help that anyone is willing to give. This is my first time running. I'm new to getting involved in the behind the scenes aspect of politics. I've been happy to go cast my vote every time there's an election, but this is my first time really seeing behind the curtain. And anyone with any advice to give, I am happy to hear it and take it on board.
Abigail, do you have a website or an email address so people can get in touch with you?
Not yet. That is one of my to-dos for this week, but if anyone wants to get in touch with me, email is very easy. It's just my first name and my last name @gmail.com. And until I get anything more official, like, please go ahead and use that.
Could you put that in chat so that people can see it written out? Your email? Does anyone have any questions for Abigail?
Yes,
Hi.
I do.
Heidi?
Why are you finding it so, why are young people finding it so hard to move back to Maine? What is the major holdup in that?
Yeah, so I have classmates that I graduated library school with who have student loans that jobs in Maine that they would take in a heartbeat, they cannot afford to take. And that's a big aspect of, you know, if you're living in Boston, for example, I've been an administrative assistant. That's most of what's on my resume. I could easily make $85,000 a year doing that in Boston, and here it's $30,000 a year, and that's a big sticker shock. And what you don't see on that job listing is you get to live in a beautiful house, you get more house for your money. Life is easier and slower than living in an apartment in Boston. And it's still a big adjustment, and it's hard to wrap your head around how to make finances work. And how to find something exciting to do. There's just a little less variety here than in a metro area where I could be working for a biotech firm or a law firm or a whatever without having to be specialized into a profession. And looking at the job market here, it doesn't feel like there's as much flexibility or possibility.
Wow. Thank you. That puts things into much bigger perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions for Abigail?
Abigail, I have a question. Are you running against an incumbent, or is this seat just open that you're running for?
There was an incumbent who was going to run, and there was a little presto changeo that happened. So now there are two other people running. One who is a longtime politician from our town, and one who is not quite so prominent. Sue, I don't know if you're here and if you have any better insight into how to describe the field at the moment.
Yes, I'm Sue Accardi. I'm chair of the Democratic Party in Raymond, and I want to thank this organization for bringing us Abigail, because she found you online, and we're thrilled that she's running, and she's got a lot of support in this town. We've had the same people on the select board for years. And it needs a little shakeup. It needs some fresh views, fresh ideas, and you know how small towns are. So that's why we're happy. And the person, there was the person that was that's dropped out, and then they quickly recruited a longtime Republican. He's been a statewide politician, and he's been in politics in Raymond for years. And so they quickly brought him on board and got his paperwork signed and all of that, whatever. So that they were nervous. So I'm glad that Abigail's running. I don't know, there was something else I was going to say, but you know, we're thinking about a campaign, and I know I've canvassed and whatnot for state and national campaigns, but I'm trying to wrap my head about how to canvass for a local campaign. I mean, we could go door to door. I think definitely signs and maybe, you know, palm cards or something like that. But any kind of input that any of the folks here could give us about running a campaign in the local level, not so much, you know, like the state or national. And the local levels, as you all know, are pretty low key. So, you know, you don't want to come in, you know, gangbusters and in a small community, but you do want to get your name out. She's, you know, no one really knows her, but we're gathering support from a lot of people that voted no on our referendum to withdraw from the RSU. And that was a very contentious vote. And a lot of campaigning went on, and it was voted down 2-1. And that's why I think it's important that we have some new people on the select board, because they all supported that. So we have support from that crew, and I think, you know, we're thrilled to have the president of the MEA in our community, and I know that she's going to help work with us. So, you know, any idea, any advice that you could give us about, you know, running a local campaign? Thank you.
I have seen hands from Sarah and Rachel and Janet, and I'll let you talk in that order. Giving Abigail suggestions to run is a great idea, but we could get overwhelmed with the meeting being taken over with lots and lots of great strategies, and we'll see how that goes. But it might be better to have more private conversations with Abigail through her email and maybe through Susan with suggestions that will particularly fit her race, because not all campaigns are the same. Not all constituencies are the same. And so there are very few one size fits all that will work for all campaigns. So rather than sort of this turning into a training session for Abigail, which she didn't actually ask for, let's see if you can give those to her through her email, and at this meeting, more general questions about the position, or what she thinks she's facing, or what her positions are, or things like that. Sarah Lawrence, I had seen your hand first. Are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Seth. And I think everything you just said makes a lot of sense to contact Abigail directly. But quick question for Abigail. Are you running as a Democrat, or is it a nonpartisan election?
It's a nonpartisan election.
Thank you.
I think most of the races that are going to be decided this summer are technically nonpartisan. But as we know, who is running, there's a great deal of difference between who is running. And so if you've got a D next to your name, I think that this committee would like to know about you and offer support as we can. Rachel, I saw your hand next.
Yeah, I just wanted to let Abigail know and to remind the other folks that the Maine Democratic Party puts online a training called Run Local. It's about an hour-and-a-half training on Zoom. You can go to the Maine Democratic Party website and take a look, follow the events, and sign yourself up for that. And it really provides just a basic understanding of local elections and how to run in them.
Great, thank you.
Ryan,
Rachel.
Just a second, Jen, I'll get to you. Ryan, can you hang on for like 5 minutes and I'll let you talk next, or do you have to go? He may have already gone. Okay, Janet, I see your hand.
Yes, and not to make it a training session, but having just gone through a local election, I guess, in general, I would suggest that you attend the meetings for whatever body it is that you're running for, so that your face is familiar. And also that you are careful about your town, because some towns don't want to hear the party politics lines. They want it to be nonpartisan. So to keep it that way. And don't be afraid, because I had to sue to be seated in my town, and was. And then afterwards, they've now voted so that if you work for the school or the town, you may not be seated. But I got in just anyway, how that worked out. But that's my suggestion, is to just be a familiar face and find the friendly groups in town, the school parents or the PTOs or the people that are going to get out and vote, and just make sure people know who you are.
Thank you.
Excellent suggestion that I think serves well anybody running for anything. Make sure that people know you, because overcoming lack of name recognition is always one of the big challenges. Does anybody have any other questions for Abigail?
It's not a question, but I'm Sue Accardi again. I put my email up on the chat line too, as well as with Abigail. So if it's all right with Abigail, you can, if anything that anybody wants to email her, they could add me to that email as well. And thank you for your suggestions on the last speaker. I totally agree with what she said, and thank you, very helpful.
Anything else for Abigail? Don't feel like you have to get all the questions in now, because we do have a couple more candidates and you'll have an opportunity to talk to them too. Thank you so much, Abigail. Run, Abigail, run. Thank you for running. You're in a district that has not always been as receptive to Democrats, and that's going to change by friendly, informed people getting the voters to understand that we're not that scary. So you're doing the work that needs to be done. Thank you for doing it. Ryan, did we lose you already? Ryan Lazanik? So Ryan is running for Portland Charter Commission. He's running in a district, Portland, the Charter Commission in. Well, let's hold off on this. We're going to hear from somebody else from the Charter Commission, and Marcus can explain. So Marcus, are you still with us?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, so this is Marcus Houston, who is also running for the Charter Commission. Tell us who you are, what you're running for, why you're running for it, and when you're explaining what you're running for, that can also explain in a way what Ryan is running for. Not to say why Ryan is running, because you can only speak for yourself, but who you are, what you're running for, why you're running, and what kind of help you would like.
Awesome. Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for having me on this meeting. It's great to see everyone here. Some new faces, some familiar faces. So thank you for being here. My name is Marcus Houston. I'm running for Charter Commission in Portland's District 4. And so just to briefly explain what a charter is for those who are unfamiliar, it is basically a city's constitution. It sort of outlines how city government works, who has power, in what sort of ways they can exude that power, and how government works and functions, and those basic principles. And so what we do as charter commissioners when elected is we go through the charter and we sort of make any changes that we see fit. We invite in a lot of different kinds of people to sort of talk about different issues. The last time the charter was opened, the big topic was having an elected mayor in Portland. That was the first time since 1923 we had had an elected mayor in Portland. So we'll invite people in and talk about those sorts of things. And then we'll propose changes to the voters. The people vote on it, and things that pass will be put into the charter. And then we'll go from there, and our job as charter commissioners will be done. So the reason why I am running is I'm a lifelong Mainer from rural central Maine. And I moved to Portland a few years ago for the thing that my mother fought for me to have, which is opportunity. And I think that Portland really has an opportunity to be a leader in Maine, but definitely needs, there's work to be done. I've spent the last 10 years of my life organizing in different realms, whether it's racial justice, poverty, childcare, that sort of stuff. And I've really found it really important. And I found it really important to sort of work with people in communities that are often forgotten about and giving them a voice. And I think a lot of this work that we're doing through the charter is going to be about giving people a voice. And that's why I've really committed to knocking on doors, talking to as many voters as possible, because I'm not a politician. This is my first time ever running for office, and I'm definitely not a policy expert by any means. And so I really want to talk to as many people in the district to gain their perspective, because I'm a Black man from a working class family who was the first in my family to go to college. Those are the perspectives that I bring to the table. But as a representative for District 4 in Portland, I find it really important to bring other people's voices to the table as well, because ultimately the charter review process is about creating a more representative democracy here in Portland and putting structures in place so that everyone has a voice in city government. So I think, with that being said, and happy to answer any questions, I think the best way to help out is just sort of help me get my name out there. I'm obviously running for the first time. A lot of people in Portland probably don't know who I am. Another reason why I'm knocking on a lot of doors. So I think just like helping me get my name out there. I'm very active on social media. Sharing stuff would be extremely helpful so that other people around here can see my name, know what we're running on, that sort of stuff. We're also knocking on doors. We have volunteers out there doing that all the time. So I think those are sort of the two big things. And I am always open to talking to people. So if you know someone who lives in Portland, they think might be worth me talking to, I'm happy to talk to them. I'm always trying to learn more about what is going on. I spend a lot of time talking to academics or other like really important stakeholders in Portland and just trying to gain their perspective as well. I'm really learning as I go. So any sort of suggestions as far as that goes is incredibly important to me. And then, yeah, like I said, knocking doors, getting my name out there is a huge help. So if you live in the area or feel really jazzed about the Charter Commission and want to come knock on some doors from out of town, I would absolutely open to that. I see a question. So District 4 is off Peninsula. It is sort of Washington Ave. It's the North Deering, East Deering, Back Cove, and Deering Center neighborhoods. So sort of like wedged in between Washington Ave and Forest Ave. I hope that answers that person's question. So yeah, with that, I'll answer any questions that anyone has.
Marcus, do you have a website or an email address so that
do.
people can contact you? And if so, could you put it into chat?
Yes. My email is marcus@houstonforportland.com. I'll put that in the chat. And the website is also houstonforportland.com.
Great. Any questions for Marcus?
How many, Marcus, how many people are in this, running for this spot? Just curious.
So in District 4, it's just me and one other, I have an opponent. So it's just me and her running for this seat.
Gotcha. And that's nonpartisan as well, I presume?
Yes, it is a nonpartisan race. I am the only Democrat in the race, though.
Gotcha.
Any other questions for Marcus? Marcus, thank you for running. As the only Democrat running for that seat, I am cheering for you. I'm
Yes.
looking forward to your election.
Yeah, thank you so much, Seth.
And Mark, you've spoken twice, and now it's your chance to speak officially. Mark Segrist is also running for an office in Cumberland County.
Yeah, thank you so much, Seth, and thanks to everyone for allowing me to speak today. It's really great actually hearing some other candidates talk about some of the same issues they're running into and just not really knowing what they're doing, but doing their best along the way. So this is actually my first time running. My name is Mark Segrist, and I am unfortunately not a lifelong Mainer, which is immediately a strike against me when I'm going door to door speaking with folks. I'm originally from a small town in western Nebraska. So if you can envision the Nebraska-Wyoming border on a map, that's where I'm from originally. I went to school at the University of Nebraska. I studied international business and economics. Very long story short, I ended up moving to Chicago, where I went to law school and That's where I met my wife, who is a Maine native. We had kids. I started my career there, and then ultimately about 3.5 years ago, we decided to move to Cumberland to start a new life here and be closer to family. So we've lived in Cumberland since 2018. And since moving here, I started getting involved immediately with the local Democratic Party here, with the Cumberland Municipal Democratic Party. I'm now serving as the vice chair on that committee, as well as the treasurer. And I've made the decision recently to take a stab at running for the Cumberland Town Council, which is also known as Select Board, I think, in other towns. But it's technically a nonpartisan race here in Cumberland as well, but I'm challenging a gentleman that's been on the council for several decades now, who is a Republican. Right now, there's 7 folks that are sitting on the council, only 1 registered Democrat. Again, it is a nonpartisan race, and so I'm trying to keep it that way as best I can through signage and palm cards and things of that nature. But I do have to say that quite a few folks, when I'm knocking on doors, ask straight up, I think within the first 2 minutes, which party you're with. So sometimes you have to let people know. For the most part, I try not to, and just kind of let the signage and the ideas speak for themselves. But I'm running in part because I think we can do, Cumberland's changing. I'm sure just like many of the other towns and districts here, but Cumberland is changing quite a bit. And so I think we can do a little bit better job in terms of not finding a balance between preserving Cumberland's past and preparing for its future. And so my platform focuses on a few different things. It's focusing on things like doing what we can to welcome more small businesses into the town. We've got certain areas that are zoned for commercial or business use that I don't feel are being fully utilized, that maybe we could bring in more small businesses and help broaden the tax base to lower taxes for folks, property taxes that being. I also serve on the Lands and Conservation Commission here in the town on the Climate Action Plan Subcommittee. So we're working with the town and this local school to hopefully become carbon neutral by 2030. And then the ultimate goal would be to have the entire town be carbon neutral by 2050. And then the last thing I'll mention is just that I'm working on trying to figure out if we can better connect the town. We've got a lot of really great trails and a lot of really good sidewalks in certain portions of the town, but I think we can just do a better job of bringing the town of Cumberland together and giving us more events to meet up and connect with our neighbors. So I have, only being here 3 years, I pretty much have 0 name recognition. And so I'm doing my best to go door to door. I did the run local training. I heard that recommended. I thought that was fantastic from the Maine Democratic Party. I do have palm cards, and I have a website, which I can put in the chat. It's marksegrist.com, where you can learn about me and why I decided to run as well. But I also have a few yard signs, but for the most part, I'm just doing as much sweat equity as I can and going door to door. That I will also say that the Maine Democratic Party has been great in terms of learning how to run the van. I think that was really, really helpful for me, the Voter Action Network. I did some training with a gentleman named Luke Siebert with the Maine Democratic Party, and he was great in helping me whittle down of, who is a Democrat or who is an independent. And frankly, the most important question right now is who's actually going to vote, because this is going to be June in 2021. And if you can whittle that down to, in my case, it's about 1,300 doors. I think I've knocked about 400 and so already, but I've got about another month left. So got a lot more to do, but I again, just really appreciate you folks letting me speak today.
Janet, I see your hand. Before I get to you, Mark, if you could put your website or contact info in chat. And I believe that you have a position with the Town of Cumberland Democratic Committee, if you want to just mention that.
Yeah, sure. So I don't know if I mentioned that at the beginning, but I serve as the vice chair and the treasurer of the local town committee. And I've done that for about, gosh, maybe close to a year now. But it's just been great. And that's one of the reasons I've gotten involved, is because I think every meeting we sat down with folks and we said, hey, did you find somebody good to run for this office? And did you find somebody good? And a lot of times we just came up empty. So I kind of pulled the trigger and got a clipboard and signed myself up.
Janet. You're muted. There you go.
Thank you. And again, not just very briefly, you want to really be sure in your town how that whole process works, because people might be turned away by lots of cards and lawn signs and that sort of thing. It sounds like, I would say it's a really good idea that you're narrowing down to try to find the people that will vote and not just going randomly door to door to talk to people. But I know that sometimes it can seem like it's too much for some communities.
Yeah.
Which is another reason why I think it's really helpful to go to the meetings, even if they're Zoom meetings, so that people see your face and that they know that you've paid attention to what's happening.
Yeah, no, I think those are great. I mean, it's such a struggle, right? This fine balance between having not much name recognition just in general, and then also wanting to get your name out there. So just to those points, I've been attending the town council meetings for probably 2.5 years to 3 years since I got here. I've attended every single budget meeting. I know every council person by name, and they know me by name. And so, yeah, hopefully checking all those boxes, but I think those points are really well taken. So.
And the one other thing that I would mention, because it was mentioned before about the president of the MEA, but if there are any sort of union members in your presence, tap into groups like that, you know, the PTA, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's great. I just, a woman who heads the PTA here in our town just wrote, I've got folks that are thankfully nice enough to be writing me letters to our local newspaper, The Forecaster here. And those have been released pretty much once a week for the last few weeks up until the election. So the most recent letter was from someone from the head of the PTA, not in that capacity, of course, but just personally. So.
Any other quick questions for Mark? Well, Mark, Marcus, and Abigail, thank you for running. Running is hard work. It's scary. It's humbling. Having done it myself, you have my great appreciation. Is there anyone else who is running? You are, even if you're not running, even if it's a nonpartisan race, anyone else who is running for something that's going to be elected in June, who is a registered Democrat? I can't give you a lot of floor time because we are now running behind, but if you would at least just like to say your name so that we can all thank you for running. All right. Next on the agenda is a legislative update with Kathy Breen and Steve Moriarty. A lot has been happening in Augusta, and we probably only know little bits and pieces of it. We are unfortunately running a little bit behind, Steve and Kathy, so I can't give you the full 40 minutes. If you could do like 30, maybe 35 to let us know what you're up against in Augusta, what kind of support, what you're doing. Kathy and Steve, you can decide how you want to use the time, but if we can finish up roughly at 4:40, 4:45, thereabouts, that would be good. I know Steve is here. I think Kathy joined us also. Steve, Kathy?
Steve, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, glad to. Thanks, Seth. I didn't realize we had quite this much time between us, but let me give you a quick overview of what I've been involved with lately. I'm in the House of Representatives representing Cumberland and part of Gray. It's House District 45. I serve on the Judiciary Committee, and we are meeting currently 4 days a week, all remotely, of course, and have been for a couple of weeks now. Prior to that, it was 3 days a week. And these are really quite long days, 8 to 9 hours per day. And it's a lot of time to spend just staring at a screen. We've lost something, I think, in the process with the inability to meet in person and to get to know each other as individuals, regardless of which side of the line you fall. But on the other hand, the work is getting done and getting done fairly efficiently and fairly thoroughly. I wanted to mention some of the more recent things. Well, actually, before I do that, let me just point out that both Kathy and I are going up to Augusta on Wednesday this coming week for the first day of legislative session in the month of April, first and in fact only day that we will be in session as an entire body. We don't have a calendar yet for what we'll be doing. We probably won't until, if the past is any experience, late Tuesday afternoon. And it'll be about 100 pages in length. And we'll have to skim it that evening and become acquainted with what we're going to be tackling the following day. We're also set to meet, I think, on May 13, and as the month of May progresses, we'll be meeting much more frequently as a body, and certainly in June with ever increasing frequency to tackle the accumulated work. So all of the committees of the legislature, despite the adjournment sine die in late March, have been working full bore and basically full time. The adjournment may have created the impression in some people's minds that we all went home and just picked up normal living. It's really not true, because the committee work has gone on without pause and at an increasing pace. Judiciary has either the second or third largest number of bills assigned to it. And according to my chair, it's about 170, 175. We've worked our way through a bunch of those so far, but some of the bills that we will ultimately tackle have not yet been released. And we're still doing initial public hearings on a number of bills, and we'll be doing so this coming week and the week following. On Friday morning last week, we tackled 4 bills, which may be of some interest to all of you. And you may have seen an article in the Press Herald on Saturday morning describing our meeting. These all had to do with the meetings of public bodies remotely. We've been, not only we in the legislature, but the local bodies have been meeting remotely pursuant to an executive order signed by Governor Mills in March last year, shortly before the entire state basically shut down. And they have turned out to be a phenomenal success at the local level in terms of not only the number of participants, but the quality of participation and the increased level of civil engagement that has come about as the result of the ability both to watch and participate in a meeting without having to go through the hassle of travel and waiting and the potential threat of exposure in the COVID environment. So the Maine Municipal Association asked a senator to sponsor a bill providing for legislation which would basically continue the governor's executive order, but convert it to the form of a statute, which would allow public bodies to meet remotely. Significantly, it's not a requirement, it's not a mandate. It's an option for communities to exercise at their will. And we heard these 4 bills together on Friday morning because we try to take bills which have a common theme or a common purpose in one setting, if we can, because it's less choppy and it helps concentrate the attention more easily. And we were told, frankly, by a number of witnesses who appeared before us that a lot of towns will absolutely reject this completely. And there are some reasons for that. They probably include, but are not limited to, local tradition and the extent to which the sophistication of local broadband coverage. It may not simply be possible for some towns in the more rural and remote areas of the state to conduct business via Zoom. And I understand that. Down in this part of the state, by contrast, I think the reverse is true. We've heard a lot from smaller bodies like water districts and Even on Friday, we heard from Buston's Island, which is a village corporation, part of the town of Freeport, and yet chartered to sort of self-govern under existing statute, and how they have valued and treasured the opportunity to participate in Freeport-based meetings while in their homes, either out of state, or actually, I guess, always out of state so far, because Buston's doesn't really open up until probably about May, and for no more than 6 months at that. So the four bills we dealt with are all somewhat different and have some things in common. The next step after the public hearing is to schedule a work session on all four together. That hasn't happened yet. It won't be done this week, and I'm not sure about the schedule for next week yet. But we don't have a lot of time to play with, so I think it'll be coming up fairly quickly. And at that time, I think what we're going to do is sort through each one individually and to select out those parts which seem to work the best and make the most sense and would be implemented most efficiently by the towns and cities in Cumberland County. Some of the ideas that, for example, that have been raised are applying this only to elected bodies within towns, not appointed bodies, excluding meetings such as town meetings and local school budget validation type meetings. And there's also a suggestion in one of the bills that executive sessions of a body cannot be done remotely. There were some concerns apparently that while the members may appear on screen to be alone and isolated in rooms in their home, there could very well be people sitting in the background and in effect taking part or at least listening in on a meeting that they're not legally entitled to attend. I frankly don't think that's a serious concern. All elected and appointed members know what an executive session is and what the law requires. We've all taken oaths to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the state. So I don't think that that's, as a practical matter, a major concern. And there is frankly a lot of serious business occasionally, not that frequently, but occasionally to be done in executive session. So it's not something that I would want to see the towns forced to give up merely because they've chosen to do things so remotely. So this has enormous support, not only from the MMA, but from a number of public interest groups. And frankly, there's a lot, it's been tremendously popular. Kate Snyder, the mayor of Portland, testified several times on Friday and said that there have been literally hundreds of such meetings in the city of Portland since last March, and it's been a tremendously successful program for them. And I think the same is true elsewhere around the country. So be on the lookout for what becomes of this package of legislation and what ultimately emerges. Judiciary is also working with a number of really quite a broad variety of items. Last week, we took up the restoration of parole in Maine, which was abolished in 1976. And we had a lot of emotional impact from not only people serving time, but victims of crime who tend to see the issue from opposing perspectives. We took up bail reform, something new for us. It typically goes to the Criminal Justice Committee, but for whatever reason, it got assigned to us this session. Other matters that we've dealt with have included landlord-tenant laws, what constitutes how an individual may be evicted if they're living in what is called a rooming house, which provides the bare necessities of living with none of the comforts of home or even one's own apartment, whether there is a landlord-tenant relationship between the rooming house owner and the person who is living there. And that's going to be a very, very tough judgment call when the time comes. One of the most important things that we're going to be taking up is a package of legislation that, to my knowledge, has not yet been fully released or printed, and that involves tribal sovereignty. That was an issue that was dealt with extensively last year in the second session of the 129th. And although I was not on the Judiciary Committee in that particular legislature, the committee continued to meet through the summer and accomplished quite a bit, kept the ball moving. But because the legislature never convened in a special session, the work was left undone, as was true for every committee in the legislature. A vast amount of stuff was just left hanging when Election Day came around and we had not reconvened. But in early May, I think it's May 4, the tribal sovereignty bills are scheduled for joint public hearings. And these are enormously important for Maine's 4 federally recognized Indian tribes. And there's a lot of strong feeling that the time is long since past for addressing this issue head on and righting the many wrongs that have been perpetrated over more than decades, actually centuries, to our native population. So I'm optimistic that this can be done on hopefully a bipartisan basis, if not entirely, then at least partially. And I'm hopeful that it can be done in a manner that will be appealing to the governor and that will not risk a veto. This, I think, at the end of the line will be one of the most important things that we do all session long. But I want to emphasize that they're still putting out bills. There are still bills that have not been printed, not been issued, that will be coming our way. And as Kathy will attest with her own committee, the process gets really exhausting after a while. So we're hanging in there. The leadership is excellent. They're keeping us on target and on course. And it has largely been a very civil, respectful process, which is not to say there aren't partisan votes, because they happen all the time. Strict party line votes where you would otherwise typically not expect them happen all the same. It's fulfilling and challenging, but very demanding work. And if there are questions, I'd be happy to answer any without cutting into Kathy's time in any significant way.
How about if we hold questions
Yep.
until after Kathy goes, because she's on. It's sort of two parts of the one big picture. People won't know what Kathy may answer the questions that people are about to ask. So Kathy, how about if I hold you to about 10 minutes? You can take less if you want. I turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. I am State Senator Kathy Breen, and I represent the communities of Gray, Falmouth, Cumberland, Yarmouth, half of the city of Westbrook, Chebeague Island, and Long Island in the Maine Senate. And I am thrilled to see a lot of familiar faces from my district, as well as other parts of Cumberland County, and to see some new faces. So thank you all for your time today. I also serve in the legislature as the Senate Chair of the Appropriations and Financial Affairs Committee. I'm serving in my 3rd term on that committee, and I'm serving in my 4th term in the Senate, which means this is my last Senate term. So my committee is the one that works on the only bill that has to pass in any given session, and that is the budget. And as many of you may have read or heard in recent weeks, after we passed the supplemental budget, which is sort of a tweak of a budget just for the current fiscal year, we decided to put forward the Back to Basics budget, which basically took everything in the last biennial budget and moved it forward into the next one. We were really hoping that Republicans would join us, because everything that's in that budget had been supported by a 2/3 majority in past votes. And we really felt like, given the pandemic and given the hardship and the uncertainty that everybody in Maine has been facing from the pandemic, that wrapping up the budget and putting it forward in March rather than driving to the very end of the session and having a cliffhanger, which is what we do far too often, was just simply the right thing to do for Maine businesses, for Maine schools, for Maine's towns, for the higher ed systems, for healthcare organizations. We really felt an obligation to make sure that those folks would know what to expect over the next 2 fiscal years, and also that there would be no threat or no possibility of a state government shutdown in the middle of this emergency. As some of you might remember, 4 years ago, there was a shutdown. And so I have lived through that. I know the implications of that. And I was really very concerned, especially given the venom on the other side of the aisle that we hear towards the governor and her emergency powers and how she has handled the pandemic, what we saw in Washington, D.C. in January. I just had a lot of concerns about what it would look like if we dragged out the budget process to the very end of the session and required 2/3. So there's no policy or legal reason to pass a budget with a 2/3 majority. It's usually a matter of timing, and it usually takes so long that we have to pass it by emergency. So it goes into effect on July 1. And emergencies take 2/3. So it's really a timing issue that has required 2/3 in the past. There's no policy reason for it. So in any event, we decided to do a very simple bare bones budget in March. Unfortunately, the Republicans decided not to join us. And so we have a basic framework in place for the next 2 years. And then we also have another revenue report coming out in May, and we have the opportunity to make some changes over the next few months to that budget if we feel like that's necessary or productive. In addition, as you all know, the Biden administration passed a large American Recovery Plan Act bill I call ARPA. And one of the things we did in the supplemental budget was we gave ourselves some authority over that. Typically, the executive branch exercises sole authority over federal funds. But because we never got back into session last year, we had no say whatsoever in how the CARES Act money was spent here in Maine. So we decided for unrestricted federal money that's just coming into the state that the legislature will need to be approving that. That's not to say the money that's going directly to towns or directly to cities or to counties or to the Department of Education, any federal money in that plan that already has a destination will get to that destination immediately, but just the $1 billion or so that's going to land in state government, the legislature will have a say in that, and we'll be negotiating that amongst ourselves and with Governor Mills. So I'm going to stop there and take any questions or see what our chair would like to do next.
I'd like you to take questions, you and Steve both. Keep them short. We're just about on time, but certainly if you've got some pressing questions for Kathy or Steve, ask them now. I see a hand from Heidi. Heidi, keep it short.
Yes, I would like to know how we can support both the tribal laws that were mentioned earlier, and also have you heard of the Pine Tree Amendment and where that might stand? Thank you. Was that short?
I thought it was short. I have not heard of the Pine Tree Amendment. So can you tell us what that is?
Yes, it's a law that would enshrine into legislation the respect for people to have the right to have access to lands and property, sort of a laws of nature type of legislation. So that people can know that the beauty of Maine will be preserved in perpetuity for all of people of Maine to respect and enjoy. And do you want me to look? I can look up the LD number. I can write it in the chat.
It's a constitutional amendment. And I'm familiar with it, Steve, because a caucus member, Senator Maxman, has put it in. So a constitutional amendment requires a 2/3 vote. And then, of course, it has to go to the voters. I am undecided at this point because I don't think it has any sort of enforcement power or mechanism. You know, I just think it's leaves the state open to probably a lot of legal liability. And I don't think it will, I don't think it's gonna advance anything specific, but you know, I'm open-minded, I'm still wrestling with it, and I need to learn a little bit more about it. And I also, to your first question, Heidi, I put in the chat a link so that you can go to the Maine legislature and offer testimony. So once you have an LD number, which you can also find on the legislature's website, you can go ahead and submit testimony electronically at your convenience.
Thank you.
I don't want to debate Kathy on that position. I'm sure she'd be open to questions outside of this. Are there any other questions for Kathy or Steve? Janet, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. And I know, Kathy, that you alluded to this, but do you see any signs of bipartisanship in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we, you know, a lot of issues in Maine, in my experience, I don't know if you felt this way, Steve, often have more of a regional divide than they do a partisan divide. So, you know, if we're talking about legacy industries in the North Woods, or we're talking about marine industries across the state, whether it's fishing or lobster or aquaculture, you know, a lot of times those issues are much more regionally identified than they are by party. And so I think a lot of what we're grappling with in some of our key industries is plenty of room for bipartisanship for sure.
And in our committee, I'll say that we've dealt with a number of judicial nominations and nominations by the governor to various other important committees. And those have, I think, to an issue, been unanimously approved. So we do see bipartisanship to that extent. Other times you get surprised on a bill that appears to be otherwise fairly innocuous and without real partisan type content or issue content that would sort of lend itself to or link itself to one side or the other, and yet you surprisingly end up with partisan party line votes. So it's a bit difficult to predict. I think we'll have a clearer picture of the status of bipartisanship on Wednesday when we're back together for the first time since having passed the budget.
Thank you.
Damon, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. So I guess what I'd like to know is in the past, some legislation has passed with pretty widespread support, but then died on the appropriations table when it had a fiscal note attached to it. And I'm wondering if we can get some information about how that might be different this year, if it's going to be or not, and if so, if there's any legislation we support if we can help encourage it or do anything to help address that, things that are relatively popular, even bipartisan, that may nevertheless have a fiscal note attached to them and not make it past appropriations. Thanks.
Yeah, so chairing that committee gives me a lot of insight into that process. Any bill that costs money for the general fund gets a price tag in the form of a fiscal note. And then all of them get placed on this fictional imaginary appropriations table. We often call it the place that great ideas go to die, which is sad. I can see Dick Farnsworth shaking his head, nodding his head. So what happens is after we pass the budget, there's usually very little money left over. And it gets divided 4 ways by the 4 caucuses, and only a handful of things make it through. And I can tell you honestly that most of the things that do rise to the top and get funded off the table are ideas that have bipartisan support in all 4 caucuses, and that we feel the governor will sign, and that often are not brand new. Sometimes they've come to the table for 2 or 3 cycles and have lived because they're fundamentally good ideas and they get support session after session. And sometimes, we will be able to fund things off the table, but typically there's only maybe $1 to $2 million that each caucus gets to divvy up after the budget is finished. So when you've got 200 or 300 bills sitting with price tags sitting on the appropriations table, that just means a lot of them won't get funded. Does that help? Does that help explain?
Yeah, I'm just curious, with all of the federal money coming in and the budget being passed early this year, will the process be any different this session than, say, the 2019 session?
It could be. The federal money that's coming in is one-time money. So it's, people like me don't want to really build a whole new program around money that's just coming in once, not coming next year. So that kind of money is going to be good for things like infrastructure, the school renovation fund, or, things like that, where different communities can tap into money for one particular project. And then I do think, since we already passed the budget, we will have a little bit more wiggle room with the general fund than we would have otherwise, where 2/3 would be required. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll have a little bit more wiggle room there. So we'll see.
That is extremely helpful. Thank you. It's, there's so many bills, it's hard to determine where to put your priorities. So
You're right.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Anything else? This has been fascinating. I'm sure we could devote an entire membership meeting to learning more about how the legislature is working and what Kathy and Steve and our other representatives and senators are doing. We're about at the end of the time that we can put in this week. Is there any question that has to be asked right now before we move on to the next item on the agenda? Steve and Kathy, thank you so much for what you're doing in Augusta and for coming here and sharing that work with us.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So next on the agenda is hearing about a committee that came together following our last membership meeting. Cumberland County's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. We had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and to their immense credit, when my car decided to leave me stranded away from home and I couldn't start the meeting, the other members started their own meeting, showing just how unimportant I am and how important they are. And the meeting doesn't have, at this point, any official officers, but Nancy Green was selected to sort of be the point person. Somebody has maybe a family or a child in the background. If you could just mute yourself for a bit.
Yeah,
Nancy?
I believe it might be Damon. He
Might
just
be.
got done speaking. Damon, do you mind muting?
Yep.
Thank you.
Great. So Nancy Green is going to tell us about the Cumberland County's new committee, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Nancy, you're on.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you so much. So as Seth has very kindly introduced this brand new committee, we did meet for the first time 2 weeks ago. We started the gathering. It was very informal, and we spent quite a bit of time finding out who we were, what we bring to the table, and why we came to the table. Why was it important to us to become members of a committee that revolved around diversity, equity, and inclusion? And after a very lively and very spirited conversation, as you can well imagine, the next topic or the next question was, are we ready to create or form a mission statement? Which we concluded that we certainly are not. The reason we're not able to come up with a statement or a mission statement at this point is because we felt that it was important to identify groups that we would like to reach out to, groups that are that we have in the state of Maine, so that we don't exclude anybody in particular, groups and communities that could be stigmatized, that are underserved, that are marginalized. And so it's larger than what we think it was initially. And so we're going to take our time, and we have started to make a list of those groups that we'd like to invite to the table. And more importantly, or is just as importantly, is to be invested in identifying barriers as to why they haven't joined us and why haven't they come to our table and participated with us. We'd like to be able to have them participate. We'd like to engage them. We'd like to invite them. So we had a lot of work to do. We also decided that whatever statement or mission statement we do develop, that it needs to be actionable. We're not prepared to just write a statement and close it and move on from that. What do we want to do? What do we want to do with this? And what are our goals? So again, as I said, we just started. We are meeting this evening. We would like to invite others to participate with us, but I think at the moment we're going to keep it as we are. Unless you're dying to join us, we would welcome you, because we're still trying to figure out where we're going to go from here forward. The purpose of this, as I said, is we don't know yet, but it's not to gain votes. It's to have these groups be a part of us. And do you have any questions?
Thank you, Nancy. So in the future, there is definitely going to be not just an opportunity, but a request for more people to be involved. My feeling is that the Democratic Party is stronger when the tent that we are building includes more people with us. And like Nancy, I would like to know why many people are not yet under our tent. And very soon, I'm going to be putting out a call for more of us to try to bring more people into our tent and to send more of us out into the community to find out what people would like to see in our tent, because we also need to be learning those things as well.
Can I jump in for a sec?
Yeah, Seth.
No, yeah, I think Nancy represented and presented that really, really well. It's a really, I think this idea of being action oriented is really right on the mark. I think the work that this committee is going to do is going to be really, really exciting. I'm really, really excited to be part of it, and I think good things are going to come from it.
And Seth was one of the founding members. Several other people who are on this this general meeting were also involved. Sarah Lawrence, Richard Farnsworth, Marcella Marino. If I've missed anyone else, don't take it personally. Just an indication that people are really getting involved in big ways, and setting an example for everyone else that there's work to be done. So that brings us to the last thing on the agenda, which is sort of the announcements, new business. And one of the things that we do at the end of every membership meeting is ask if there are any people who would like to become voting members of the Cumberland County Democratic Committee who aren't yet voting members. Anyone who is a Democrat living in Cumberland County is welcome to attend our meetings, but they don't have voting rights until they formally get brought into the committee. So if there is anyone who would like to be voted in, I see your hand, Abigail, and I'll be with you in a second. It looks like, Abigail, are you asking to be added in as a voting member of the Cumberland County Democratic Committee? Abigail, you're on mute at the moment.
Yes, I was asking to be added as a voting member.
Okay. Anyone else who would like to be added in as a voting member? And if you don't have a raise hand function, if you can catch my attention in some other ways, that's perfectly fine.
Hi, somebody added themselves to chat.
Okay, so I see Barry Powers. Oh, Abigail, you already told us earlier you're from Raymond, I believe. Barry, what town are you from, Barry?
Hi, Seth. Barry Powers. I'm in Sebago and running for Budget Committee in a nonpartisan election.
Okay. Wish you had mentioned that to me earlier. Would have let you take a bow and get some congratulations. But I need to confirm that everybody actually is a registered Democrat in Cumberland County. That's why I'm asking your towns.
Yep.
As I get
I'm pretty
names.
sure I am. If I'm not, I'll switch from unaffiliated. I'm certainly not registered as a Republican. So
No, I believe you there, but we do require you to be registered as a Democrat before you can become a member of the Cumberland County Democratic Committee. But I will let you know if it turns out that you're not.
please do. Thanks, Seth.
Anyone else who would?
I would like to be added, please.
And who is this?
Matthew Irving from Westbrook.
Okay. Anyone else?
Let's see. Seth?
Yes.
Barry is a registered Democrat. I'm the municipal chair at Sebago.
Okay. I still have to just confirm it. I believe both of you, Joe and Barry. I'm sure it's a formality, but it is a formality that I have to do. That after this group, anyone who this group approves for membership, I just need to confirm they are registered Democrats. If they are, no further steps are needed. If they're not, then I will let those individuals know that I'm not finding that they are registered Democrats. And then, as Larry said, they would have an opportunity to enroll. It is a formality, but I do have to just check on that myself, Joe. So it's not a personal thing. I hope you won't take it that way.
I don't take it that way, but let's go through with the process and get it done.
Okay, anyone else? I have Abigail Gear, Mary Powers, Matthew Irving.
I
Is-
just want to make sure that, do you have to renew every year or you have to year grandfathered along?
Well, it's roughly every 2 years. So
Okay.
new members are brought in as representatives of their town at the caucus, which is every 2 years. Once you come in that way, you remain a member either until you leave or until the next caucus. If you don't come in through the caucus process, then you can be voted in by membership as an at-large member rather than as a representative from your town. And that's what we're doing here. But Ellen, you are already a member at this point. It won't last forever. It will probably be up for
Okay.
renewal, as all of us will be up for renewal roughly in March of 2022.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else who would like to be added, subject to my confirmation at this point? Is there any opposition to any of the three, Abigail Gear, Barry Powers, Matthew Irving, being added as new members? And would somebody like to make a motion that we accept them as members, subject to my confirming that they are registered Democrats in Cumberland County?
Make a motion that we accept them.
I move.
I see a motion and a second. Is there any opposition to that motion? It carries without opposition. So now is the time for people to raise. Let me also say that our next scheduled meeting is likely to be at the end of June. And that's mostly going to be devoted to ways that our members can get involved. Committees that we think we need to form, committees that already exist where we want people to get involved. We've already mentioned the need for a bigger, more active finance committee. In June, we can certainly discuss more of those as people bring things to each other's attention. That's probably going to be the major part of our June general membership meeting. Also, unfortunately, I'm not saying this is going to happen, we may be needing to replace a couple of people, representatives to the state committee. A couple of people have told me that they may be moving out of Cumberland County. I hope that that's not true, because we certainly have valued their contribution to the state committee. But if they move out of county, they would no longer be eligible to serve on the state committee. That may be on the agenda in June as well. I will keep everybody posted. Is there anything else of an announcement or new business? Eli, I see your hand up.
Hi, I just didn't know how popular 60 Minutes is as a program, but I got an email from Keith Ellison's office saying that he is going to be on talking about recent Minnesota events that I think we're all interested in. So I just want to make sure people knew that he was going to be interviewed there tonight.
Thank you, Eli. Anyone else? Oops, I just lost my screen. Anything else? New business announcements? 5:04, not so bad. Thank you all for, again, being Democrats and dedicating a Sunday afternoon to this kind of meeting. It's going to make Cumberland County stronger. It's going to make Maine stronger. And as Maine leads, it's going to make the United States stronger. See you again in 2 months.
Do you need a motion to adjourn?
Oh, yes. Well,
I so moved.
if you have any questions, suggestions, comments, feel free to get in touch with me before our next meeting. And now I think Richard is making a motion to adjourn. Are you, Richard?
Exactly, yes.
And if there's a second, that will wrap it up for this month.
I second it.
Thank you all. See you in a couple months.
Yeah.